Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a huge journey across a nation that is just defined by its incredible scale, Canada. We're going to go from the Pacific to the Arctic, all the way to the Atlantic. And along the way, we'll see how these massive landscapes have really shaped everything about the country, its people, its politics, and how it sees itself in the world.
All right, first things first, let's just try to wrap our heads around the size. We're talking nearly 10 million square kilometers. That makes Canada the second largest country on the entire planet. It's a land of truly staggering size.
Okay, so it's huge. We get it. But what's the real story here? What actually defines this place? Well, the answer is kind of hidden in its national motto, Amare usque ad mare. That's Latin for from sea to sea. And that simple phrase is going to be our roadmap for this whole journey.
Before we kick off our cross-country trek, let's just pause on a few more numbers, because they really drive home how immense Canada's geography is.
First up, get this, its coastline. At over 200,000 kilometers, it is, by far, the longest in the world. I mean, it's not even a close competition. And why is it so long? Because it touches 3 different oceans, the Pacific, the Atlantic, and, way up north, the Arctic.
Now here's the fact that sounds made up, but it's totally true. Canada has more lakes than every other country in the world combined. Yeah, you heard that right. We're talking an estimated 2 million lakes. And all that fresh water isn't just pretty to look at. It makes Canada a powerhouse for hydroelectric energy.
Okay, let's start our journey for real now. Out on the west coast, in British Columbia. This is Canada's gateway to the Pacific. And wow, is it a dramatic place, where these rugged mountains just dive right into the sea.
The geography here is just a force of nature. You've got that wild Pacific coastline, and then bam, the coast mountains just shoot straight up. And right behind them, you've got the world-famous Rockies. It's like this series of giant natural walls that separates the coast from the rest of North America.
And that giant wall of mountains we just talked about? Well, it's absolutely key to the weather here. It literally traps all the moisture coming in from the Pacific, and that creates this really unique oceanic climate. So think mild, very wet winters, and pretty cool summers, which, as you'll see, is totally different from what's just on the other side of those mountains.
So, let's do it. Let's hop over those massive mountain ranges and head east. We're now in the great interior of the country. This is a gigantic region that covers the prairies and this ancient rock formation called the Canadian Shield.
And whoa, the change in climate is immediate, and it is dramatic. The second you get east of the Rockies, you enter what's called a rain shadow. Those mountains block all that Pacific moisture, and the result is a classic continental climate. We're talking bitterly cold winters, really hot summers, and just massive swings in temperature.
This huge interior isn't just flat and open, it's basically Canada's engine room. The fertile prairies and that ancient Canadian Shield are just packed with natural resources. Oil, natural gas, minerals, timber, you name it. And remember all those lakes? This is where they help make Canada a world leader in hydroelectric power.
Okay, let's keep pushing east. Our journey now brings us into central Canada, which means the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. And this area, this is the demographic, economic, and political nerve center of the entire country.
This is where you'll find the nation's capital, Ottawa, which sits right on the border between English-speaking Ontario and French-speaking Quebec. It's also home to the country's biggest city, Toronto, and the cultural heart of French Canada, Montreal.
So the government that's based here is a really unique mix of history and modern democracy. It's called a constitutional monarchy. Now, that sounds complicated, but it just means that the British monarch is the symbolic head of state, while the real power to govern belongs to Canada's own elected parliament.
And here's a quick look at how that all works. The monarch's role is mostly ceremonial, and they're represented by a governor-general. The person actually in charge is the prime minister, along with their cabinet. Laws get made in parliament, and the Supreme Court has the final say. It's a really stable parliamentary system.
All right, to finally complete our journey from sea to sea, we're heading east one last time to the Atlantic coast. And then we're going to take a sharp turn north, way up to the vast Arctic.
So, as we travel east out of the heartland, we arrive in the Atlantic provinces. These places are just steeped in maritime history. And this is where we finally reach that second sea, fulfilling the promise of the national motto.
But here's the twist. From sea to sea is actually incomplete. It kind of sells the country short, because Canada also stretches way north to a third ocean, the Arctic.
This incredibly vast and very sparsely populated region is made up of 3 territories: Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. And all of them are defined by their enormous size and, you guessed it, a seriously harsh Arctic climate.
So now that our trip from sea to sea is finally complete, let's zoom out. How does this massive, really diverse country interact with the rest of the world? What's Canada's role on the global stage?
Well, for one thing, Canada is deeply connected. It's a founding member of huge international groups like the UN and NATO. It's a player in the big economic clubs like the G7 and G20. And it keeps strong ties through things like the Commonwealth and its vital North American trade deal.
And all of that deep involvement has really helped Canada build a pretty distinct reputation. You'll often hear it called a middle power. That means it's a country that tends to use its influence to encourage cooperation, to promote international peacekeeping, and to push for diplomacy. And that brings us right back to where we started, from sea to sea. It's so much more than just a geographic description, isn't it? It's really the core identity of a nation that was built on this grand idea of spanning an entire continent.
So, our journey's shown us a nation that's been shaped by these massive landscapes, built on incredible resources, and has carved out a role for itself as a stable, democratic player on the world stage. And it all kind of leaves you with one big question. In a world that's changing faster than ever, what's next for this nation of vast geography and quiet influence?